the challenges I think were sort of common in that there is no, or rather there is very little feedback as such. So when we are teaching in class, you can see, people, if they're interested, not interested. Behind the video, people mostly, fewer people, let me say, tend to ask questions, and then therefore the classes become less interactive. And when the classes become less interactive, it becomes, I think, less interesting for the students, but also less interesting for us as teachers in that sense, because you're teaching to sort of a blank screen, and that is that's never nice. So I actually taught. So over the last year, I taught 2 courses. So and it was interesting because one was this very small elective course. So it was about 15 students or so. The other was the PH 108. So it was the first year course, which had 300 students. Well, technically, I don't think 300 is to come, but yeah. So so in the elective course, it was perhaps easier in that I could make it more. So what we had was a lot of more project presentations, seminars, and so on. So on the whole, I think it was half and half between me speaking and the students speaking. So in that sense, it sort of hopefully kept people a bit more active, a bit more engaged, and so on. But that is, while that is possible to do in a class of 15 students, it's not possible to do in a class of 300 students. And in the class of 300 students, I really don't know. I don't think actually I succeeded a lot in that sense. Perhaps being the most effective teacher that I could have been. It's hard because, so you are asked that, people please ask questions and so on, but it's difficult, and there are of course questions, but you can see that mostly people, I think, sort of tend to drift off a bit, and I really don't know what is a good or a effective strategy to sort of mitigate that, especially in these larger classes. So I would say in smaller classes, what I did was I tried to involve the students a lot more, and I think that worked out. In the larger classes, I think, I just think I failed in that sense. So I don't really have a good answer as to how to be more effective in that. Well, it's not that I could not have done. So, for example, in the current course, what I do is that I have weekly quizzes. It sounds bad, but in the sense that it's just like 10-minute quizzes every week, which is good and bad in the sense that it's because it's in the current course that I'm teaching. So my lectures are already recorded because last year was also online. So I get a lot more, and this is the small elective class that I'm talking about. So I get a lot more chance to actually talk about things a little beyond what is there in the lectures, so things that are actually more practically oriented and so on. But I also want people to watch the lectures, so I have these weekly quizzes, and I decrease the weightage of the NSEMs and the MidSEMs and so on. And I think it's worked out well because in some sense, the NSEMs, so when we have whatever 30 mark, 40 mark, like long exams, it has its own place. I mean, there is certainly something to be said for people coming, especially in a subject like physics. You come and you work out a long thing, and you get to somewhere in the end. But on the other hand, there is also something to be said for continuous assessment, in that mostly, as you know and we know, people mostly study, before NSEMs. You study 1 week before NSEMs, and you mug up whatever. You may do well in the exams, but in that sense, how much one keeps in mind at the end of the course is perhaps questionable in that sense. Whereas in a continuous assessment, it's true that there is not perhaps, in a continuous assessment, at least you're being forced to sort of read as the course progresses. So I think that has been nice. And it's something that provided students don't complain too much, I might do a little bit to a certain extent even when classes start back offline. So that is one. The other is that having these lectures pre-recorded means that students can watch it at their own leisure, and therefore, especially again for these smaller elective classes, it leaves me a lot more time to have actually student presentations, have a lot more sort of flipped or an interactive thing, which I would not have been able to do in an offline class, because I would have to cover that certain material that students can now watch at their own convenience, but I would then have to cover it in class. So it leaves me a certain amount of time free to experiment and sort of try to engage the students a bit more, which I perhaps would not have been possible in the offline setting. So that has been nice in that sense. Yeah. So what I miss most is like just staring at this computer screen and teaching, and also I miss writing on the blackboard. The iPad is, or whatever tablet one uses, is so inconvenient. Like write down 5 lines and the page is over, and then you have to flick back. I mean, having all the information, I think it's actually not just a comfort thing, but even for students, like if you have this big blackboard and all the information is there, which we discussed 15 minutes back, you can at least just look at it at every moment and just, flip back and forth, which helps actually. In this, and I think that is one of the main problems even of slide-based teaching. That information which we were talking about is now gone. I now have to actively go back slides or whatever in the iPad. I have to go back pages to sort of get back to that, and that is that's very irritating as a teacher, because I just can't point there and say that look at that formula, and now look at this where we arrived at this formula. I have to actually go back. So that's very irritating. And then of course there's this fact of talking to screens, which is also it just doesn't have that feedback of like teaching. And the success, see, all of us know that there are n number of videos available on the internet, right? Whatever topic you say, people have NPTEL videos, but you also have so many other platforms, edX and this and Coursera and this and that and so on. A lot of the value in the classroom is having these sort of discussions, digressing a bit and so on. It's not that it is not possible. That is not possible online, because if people ask questions, that becomes possible. But like I said, once you are behind a video screen, people tend to ask less questions. As people tend to ask less questions, the value of these classes sort of go down a bit, because you're learning what you're learning from watching the lectures, but that you could have watched. The n number of lectures available online for you to watch as well. So in that sense, there is a sort of decrease in what we are getting out as teachers, and I think also what students are getting out of this as students through this online media. All I can remember right now is when I was teaching this 108. Somebody unmuted themselves and they were listening to a cryptocurrency seminar, so I learned a little bit of that. I think in the sense that it has been difficult in the sense that there is a lot less distinction between work and home. Because right now at least things are better in Bombay, and at least I come to office and teach. But often earlier on, when it was in full lockdown mode, we were teaching from home, and even now mostly, we work from home itself, try to minimize coming. And in that sense, that becomes a challenge, right? So just like for students, whatever people are doing jharu pocha at home, even for us, in the background, life is going on, and it's then, and it's our life. So, we have to be involved in that. If my kid comes and asks me something, she comes and asks me something. So, that balance is difficult. finding sort of concentrated time for academics, research, everything becomes difficult. You tend to find time in snatches. Like earlier, if I could come to office, let's say in the morning at 9:30, and then I could, I have a stretch till 1 when I'm just working. Here, maybe, I have to navigate other things, and then I am only able to work in half an hour slots, which is often not ideal. So I'm not talking specifically of teaching per se, but also just of work, like research and so on. That if every half an hour you have to break for something, then concentration becomes difficult. As concentration becomes difficult, productivity becomes low. And, so in general, I think even as teachers and so on, my productivity has been lower in the pandemic period than it was in normal times. So that has been a challenge, hopefully. In this context, I don't know, as students, one thing has happened during the pandemic is that I can no longer watch any videos like YouTube or Netflix or whatever at normal speed. So I'm sure that has happened to you guys as well. Like even when I'm teaching, even if it's my own lecture, before the class, I just tend to go through it once to see, what all topics I had talked about. And I go through it at whatever 3x. So whenever now I hear a normal video, I'm like, why are people talking so slowly? Speed up. So I'm sure that has happened to you guys. I'm sure none of you watches videos at 1x anymore. But yeah, so I just thought that's it. So anyway, but as a student, I really. So, frankly, I don't know how you people are doing this, like watching so much of online videos and then staying online, or like being available in front of a computer all day. It's like hats off to you guys, because we teach whatever 2 classes or 3 classes a week, and even that I find tiring in that sense that after class I just take a break and not do anything. So. I'm like supremely grateful on the one hand that I'm not a student in this circumstance, and I really admire how despite all of this, all of you being at home, all these internet issues, life going on in the background, so all of the stresses of college in that sense without much of the fun, because a lot of college is supposed to be fun. You come here, you be with friends. The social aspect is gone. What is there is academics, which is of course important, but it is not the only thing that one comes to college for, and nor should one come to college for. Beyond a point, you've been in school and so on. So college is supposed to move away from that stage when people tell you that, okay, this is the correct answer, this is what you're supposed to do, and you just do it. You work out 10 sums in 20 minutes and so on. That phase is supposed to be over, and you're supposed to explore, talk to people, do different things. And in that sense, that is one of the strengths of IITB, like this all these campus things that go on. So that is a loss. I just don't know. So I really admire you guys. I personally don't know how I would have coped with such challenging circumstances. So right now, I think my favorite stretch is this place. So we have this guest house. We have 3 guest houses: Van Vihar, Padma Vihar and Jal Vihar. Jal Vihar is the one that overlooks the Powai Lake, and so there is this road which borders the lake. So it's the boundary of IIT in that sense, across Powai Lake. I think that is like my favorite stretch, in that I go for a walk along that stretch, and it's very nice. It's breezy. It's fewer people, lots of trees, lots of mosquitoes also, but yeah, I mean, that's life. But so in that sense, I think that is one of my favorite stretches. Also, like mostly, so a couple of things. One is that, of course, you get to see Powai Lake, especially in the monsoon. So Powai Lake generally is perhaps not in the best state with a lot of growth and so on. But in the monsoons, at least, it becomes very nice. Water fills up, and so it's a nice place to be. And then there is this very nice lake breeze also. So in that sense, I think it's one of my favorite places. What else? I think I like going to the swimming pool and so on, but that is now closed. In general, actually, it's been especially during this first lockdown, like early last year, like April, when lockdown was very new and it was very strict. It was really like the whole campus became a very different place. Like, generally, even if you went out at 3 a.m. in the night, people are always there on streets. The hostel late night canteens are open, and then it suddenly became like completely empty. So I often used to just walk around at night because it was a whole like starkly different sort of a campus. Now, of course, it's slowly, as I think people are coming back, it's getting back to what the campus was. Still not as of course, but at least one gets to see people around. At that time, one didn't even get to see any people around, which was strange. I really don't know any advice. All I would say is that these are strange times in that sense, and it is not what any of us wanted, but it is what we have to live with. And in that sense, like I was saying, in what one misses out in this mode is this sense of community, is this exploring the world outside of academics or outside of your branch and so on. So all I would say is that try to find avenues to do that, whatever it is. I don't know what platform most people use these days, but at least even if it is an online mode, try to form connections with your peers in the department, out of the department. Like in IIT, one of the strongest things is not just the department connection, but these hostel wingmates connections and so on. So all of that. I don't know how to replicate it, but I'm sure you guys may find some way at least to, if not replicate it, at least find something that stands in its stead, so that even though you people are not physically in the same spot, you find some way to connect to people beyond your batch or beyond your whatever branch through common interests and so on, and at least form some sort of a social life. Somehow. So that's my advice. Whatever. It's not really an advice. It's just something that find a way to do it, because that is in some sense much more important to shaping your life as human beings. How you navigate the world and how your worldview broadens by exposure to different people, different thoughts, So my advice. Not very effective advice, I feel, but.